so much for joining us today, everyone, for this webinar. Today we're going to be talking all things personal statements. So firstly, I'm going to go over to Lucy for a quick overview. Can you just tell us a little bit about UA92, please?
Yeah, of course. So UA92, we're a deliberately different higher education institution. We do things very, very differently here. We are founded by the class of 92, ex-footballers, and our degrees are awarded by Lancaster University. But when I say we do things very differently, we only have 4 subjects here: business, media, sports and digital. And our whole approach to you getting a degree is very different. I always like to say that we're more of like a practical hands-on sort of university, but that's not the only thing about us. We also have like multiple different start dates, so you don't just have to start in September. We also have November, January, February, April and June. You study one subject module at a time, so it's really easy to stay on top of all of your work. We don't have any traditional end-of-year exams apart from in the accounting and finance course. So again, it's all kind of like practical-based assessments. Sometimes it might be coursework, group work presentations, different things like that. Fixed timetable, so you're either an AM student or a PM student. And then we place a lot of focus on your character and personal development here as well. So that's kind of UA92 in a little bit of a nutshell. So yeah.
Thanks so much for that overview. Sounds great. So what is a personal statement then, just to get into the questions about personal statements?
Yeah, so a personal statement is basically a piece of writing that supports your university application. It's 4,000 lines, sorry, not 4,000 lines, it's 4,000 characters, which is 47 lines, which is basically like a side of A4. So it's actually quite a short document. So that's essentially what a personal statement is.
Thank you. And why are personal statements so important?
So they're important because it's kind of your way to stand out from the crowd. Obviously, you have to imagine that universities, they get a lot of applications, you know, tens of thousands, some universities, and everyone will be like applying for the same thing. So it's kind of your way of standing out amongst everyone, showing off your passions as well. Again, kind of showing that you've got like a vested interest in the course and all of that good stuff. And then it is also a way to show off your skills as well. So, you know, you might have a lot of like transferable skills, you might have a lot of skills that are directly related to the course, but the personal statement is kind of where you get everything across. So yeah.
Sounds good. So how do you stand out and show off your passions and skills?
Yeah, so I'd say for this one, you kind of want to talk about things that you would do like outside of like the course that you're doing at college or sixth form. It kind of, for me, it kind of just shows that you've got like a vested interest in things, because it shows that you're someone who's willing to go like above and beyond. You know, say you're doing like an online course that's related to the degree that you want to apply for. Yeah, like I said, just kind of shows that you're someone who's willing to go that extra step, and that's really what universities look for.
That's really good advice. So what else goes into a personal statement then? What else do you need to include?
Yeah, so you definitely need to make sure that you include your academic abilities. So your academic interests, again, kind of like why you've chosen to do that course. Within this as well, you can talk about the things that you are currently studying at college or sixth form, and how this kind of like relates to your course. Again, you'll talk a lot about like transferable skills, but I'll touch on that a little bit in a minute. Then you can kind of split this into like 3 different sections. So if we say that academics is section A, then section B can be abilities. So within this, you'll talk about any relevant like work experience you have. You might have done work experience. You might have done work experience as part of your course, different things like that. Again, any transferable skills you have, so you might be part of like a football team or something like that where you've got different skills. And then section C is all about like your future plans. So that's basically where you see this degree getting you and sort of like what your 5-year plan is. Right. So that's everything that you need to include in it.
Okay, great. So where do you even start with making a plan to write one?
Yeah, so I think a lot of times like students really struggle with this because it can be quite daunting, like especially if you've never had to like write about yourself like this. Something that I did and something that I always kind of like say to students as well is I would always start with a mind map, because I just think it's really easy to visualize everything with a mind map. You can make like multiple branches going off different things. But within that, it's also good to kind of like ask yourself questions to make sure that you're hitting every point. So, you know, things like why are you wanting to study this university course? Again, that's kind of going to be you talking about where you see this course getting you, where you see this degree getting you. Why does the subject interest you? So it's important to be as specific as you possibly can be within this. So, you know, you might have had I don't know, you might have had like an experience in your childhood that really made you want to be a sports coach, for example, or a nurse, or whatever it is that you're applying for. So yeah, so just be as specific as you possibly can and give as much detail as you can. What would make you the ideal student as well? Again, like I've already said, universities get a lot of applications, so they really want to know what makes you stand out from everyone else. So again, you could say things like, you know, I'm really trustworthy, I'm really reliable, I've got a part-time job, I'm always on time for my shifts, different things like that. But I think just whatever you mind map, even if you don't think it's that relevant, I would still kind of say put it onto that initial plan. And then once you get into like the later stages, you can kind of like whittle it down and see if everything is actually relevant and is actually important. So yeah, so that's basically where I would say to start with that. So yeah.
Thank you for that. And again, that all sounds really good, but what about the students that struggle with creating a plan?
Yeah, so I think if you are someone that struggles with doing a plan, which, you know, some people do struggle, it's fine. I would kind of say my advice would be to think of as many like transferable skills as you possibly can. So when I say transferable skills, I basically mean the skills that you'll get from doing like other things. So, you know, a lot of students are often part of like a sports team. You might be part of the football team, the netball team, whatever it may be, but you have to think, right, I'm part of this team, what sort of skills does being in this team give me? So within that, you'll have a lot of like team working skills as one. You'll also have communication skills, motivation skills as well. So I would kind of say maybe like list out all of the things that you do in your spare time and kind of just like write next to it what sort of skills, etc. You have. Because like I said, you will have skills that like you don't even think are skills, if that makes sense. Whenever I like go into schools and colleges and I'm doing sessions with people, a lot of the time they're like, well, all I do is like sit on my phone, sit on TikTok, whatever. But then I try to like spin it to them in a way where it's like, you will have skills such as like creative skills, like making content and different things like that. So again, it's just about trying to pull out as many skills as you possibly can from everything.
Okay, yeah, great. Sounds like a lot to fit into 4,000 characters though. So do you have any tips on how students can make sure they're being specific with everything that they put into a personal statement?
Yeah, so yeah, it is a lot to fit into 4,000 characters. And, you know, once students have done like their first draft, they'll probably find that it goes like way over the character count. So yeah, it is a lot to fit in, but yeah, in terms of like giving tips on how to do it, one thing that we say to students is you can kind of like break it into point, skill and link. So for example, you could give the point, and then the skill could be like the transferable skill. So kind of like I was talking about before, with like the football team. You might say that you are part of, like your school's football team, and then you pull out the skill that's within that. So again, the skill could be team working skills, it could be like motivation skills, and then the link is just always like linking it back to your application. So obviously it's great that you're part of a football team and it's great that you've got these skills, but why does this link to the application? So again, if you're applying to do a sports coaching degree or like a PE degree, for example, you're going to need those communication skills because that's really going to help you within the degree. So yeah, so I would always just say kind of like breaking it down into point, skill and link. That is basically my advice that I would give.
Okay, great. So it sounds like they might have to do a few drafts. How
Yeah.
many versions does it typically take? And do you have any tips for students when reading through their drafts?
Yeah, so it does take a lot of drafts. When I did my personal statement, I remember it literally, I think I did about like 7 drafts. I'm not saying that that's what you need to do. It's typically about like 3 or 4. But yeah, doing as many drafts as you can is important. Because, you know, you'll miss things first time. Sometimes you might add too much as well. So doing as many drafts as you can is really, really important. But within the drafting process, you do need to make sure that you're doing other things such as like taking time away. Again, when I was doing my personal statement, and even now, like when I'm doing like my day-to-day, I do find it really important to just like step away from what you're doing, because sometimes like your creativity doesn't really work properly when you're staring at the same document over and over again. So just making sure that you do take that time away from it to kind of give your brain a little bit of space to think. Something that used to help me as well was pretending to be someone else. I think this is a really big thing for students when they're writing personal statements that they struggle with, is like writing nice things about themselves. No one really likes saying nice things about themselves, and especially not when like you're a student and like you've never really done this before. So a tip that I always like to give is maybe pretend you're like your best friend, or maybe like your parents, someone else in your family, someone that would say nice things about you. Just pretend that you are that person. And again, you might find it a lot easier to say nice things about yourself. So there's that. There's also reading it out loud. This, again, I keep saying that these are big ones for me, but that was a real big one for me when I was doing my personal statement. Because what often happens when you're doing a document like a personal statement, you'll have... You'll read it over, obviously, but then when you read it out loud, you sometimes come across mistakes that you didn't come across when you were reading it, if that makes sense. So reading it out loud is always a big one, because you'll notice like little things. You'll notice when sentences don't flow properly as well. So yeah, reading it out loud is another big one. Then colour coding can also be a way of making sure that you've got everything in there and be part of that drafting process as well. Again, there's obviously a lot to get into a personal statement, but kind of like colour coding each section, you know, you could have, I don't know, for example, like blue as your academic interests, you could have like yellow as your work experience, I don't know, purple to talk about like your career aspirations, different things like that. But again, just kind of colour coding. Really make sure that you are getting everything in there. And then the last thing to do with drafting that I would say is always ask for feedback. That's kind of what teachers are there for. Sometimes you'll have universities that come in to read personal statements as well. That's why we come in. Maybe even getting your friends to read yours and you read theirs. Because even when you're doing that, you might find that they've added something in theirs that you might potentially have missed from yours. So yeah, definitely getting some feedback on them, I would say, as part of that drafting process as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I agree. And I was the same when I was doing my personal statement. It took me so many tries, but I think that's the advantage of starting early and being prepared, just so you can get all them drafts in and get it checked over as well. So is there anything you would definitely avoid to put into a personal statement then?
Ooh, yeah. So things to avoid in personal statements. I'd say cliches. A lot of people start their personal statements like, since I was young, or like I have a real passion for, which like is fine, but when you're at university and you've read that same sort of line like over and over again, it's like, you know, write something else, guys, come on. So yeah, I'd kind of avoid cliches like that. Also quotes as well is a big one. I just don't think quotes should really be in personal statements. Like I've said, a personal statement is 4,000 characters, 47 lines. We don't really need to know about anyone else. We just want to know about you. So I'd say just don't waste those precious characters talking about someone else. And that's exactly what you're doing if you put a quote in there. So I know sometimes like students think that like they fit really well, but honestly, guys, I'd just say like avoid them completely, because it just takes up all of your lines. Other things, bad language. Hopefully no one will write bad language in their personal statement or like slang, but it is like a formal piece of writing. So just making sure that, you know, you are talking or like writing, I should say, in a formal sort of way, not using like slang words like in it or whatever. Don't do that in a personal statement. Yeah, jokes as well. Sometimes you'd be surprised how many people write jokes in a personal statement. Again, it's not really the vibe of a personal statement, so I would definitely avoid that. And then the last thing as well, what I would say is make sure you are using a professional email address. There would be nothing worse than you applying to university using the email address that you made in year 6. So maybe don't do that. Again, whenever I go into colleges and stuff, I just always say to students, like, just make a nice, simple, professional email. Your first name, your last name, and then like the year you were born, something like that, but just not like Captain 2469, like just nothing like that. Just make sure it's nice and professional and make sure that's the email address that you apply to uni with, because you wouldn't want them laughing at you. Not that we would do that, but you wouldn't want that to happen. So yeah.
Thanks so much. You've covered so much there, so much great advice. Any last bits of advice or anything you wanted to include?
I'd say, obviously, like I kind of said at the start, the personal statement is just all about like bringing your passion across in it. So just making sure that you're doing that as much as you possibly can. Evidencing everything as well, like back up all of the examples. So again, kind of like I was saying, you know, it's great if you're part of like a sports team. It's great if, you know, you like learn a language outside. It's great if you do volunteering, etc. But like, why are you putting that in the personal statement? You're obviously putting that in because you think it's worthwhile, and it definitely is, but like, tell us about it. So tell us about the skills that you've got from it. Again, it's all kind of about transferable skills and just pulling those skills out of everything that you put in there. And then I guess the last piece of advice would just, this isn't something that I've said, but you always need to be honest in a personal statement as well. You know, doesn't really matter like what course you're applying for, what university you're applying for. Always be honest, because sometimes some universities do interviews as well, and you definitely don't want to be pulled up about something that you've wrote in your personal statement that's a lie. There'd be nothing more awkward than that. So you might be tempted to do some like half-truths here or there, but it's always better to just tell the truth. So be honest as you possibly can in the statement as well, is what I would say.
Okay, thank you. So I think we've had a few more questions come in just whilst we've been on the webinar, which is great. So I'm just going to firstly ask, how do I format the personal statement?
Yeah, so in terms of format, you'd literally just kind of do it in like paragraphs. So you'd always have like an introduction, and your introduction, again, kind of, your introduction would just sort of, you know, be about like why you want to choose the course and different things like that. Then as you go into your other paragraphs, it's kind of like second paragraph can be about your like academic abilities and the skills that you've got from the course that you're doing at college or sixth form currently. And again, just kind of breaking everything down into paragraphs like that. It just means that it's a lot easier for universities and like the admission staff to kind of like read and digest. So definitely doing it in paragraphs, but again, just making sure that each paragraph has like a clear and set point to it. And definitely always write a conclusion as well. I've read a lot of personal statements recently where they just kind of like end quite abruptly, but I always think doing a conclusion is a really nice thing to do because it just ties everything together. So defo add in a conclusion is what I would say.
Thank you. And finally, somebody has asked, I have a lot of hobbies, should I include them?
Oh yeah, definitely. Again, a personal statement is all about universities getting to know you. So, you know, if you've got a hobby, it shows that you've got a passion for something. So definitely include your hobby. And again, within that hobby, you'll definitely have skills from that. So like I was kind of saying, everything that you put into a statement has to be relevant, but the way that you make it relevant is talking about the skills that it has given you. So yeah, whatever your hobby is, definitely include it. But the main point is just picking out the skills, etc., that you've got from that hobby.
Thanks. We've got time for a few more questions.
Okay.
So somebody's asked, how many unis can I apply for and courses?
Yeah, so you can apply for up to 5 universities. They can be, that's how many choices you get on UCAS. They can be all different courses, but then bringing it back to the personal statement, if you are applying for multiple courses, you know, you might be someone who's applying for like sports coaching, but you might also be applying for something, I don't know, like psychology or something. You kind of want to make your personal statement a little bit more vague, which can be a little bit harder. But again, my advice for students who are applying for different courses like that is you really, really just have to hone in on the transferable skills, because that's kind of what's going to help you make it as like vague as possible. Also within a personal statement, you don't really want to name the university that you're kind of like your top choices, just because the same personal statement, you only write one personal statement and that same statement will go to every single university. So you don't want to be naming them because, you know, a different university might read it and be like, oh, that's not us. So yeah, definitely just don't name any universities. But obviously if you know the course that you're applying for and you're applying for that one course at multiple different universities, then you can definitely name the course, but just not the university. So yeah.
Okay. Should students talk about their job?
Yeah, definitely. If you have a job, then yeah, definitely talk about it. Yeah, if you've got any part-time jobs, yeah, definitely talk about them in a personal statement. Again, you will have a lot of qualities and skills that you will get from a part-time job that will be really interesting for universities. So, you know, you might be a waitress, you might work in like Tesco, for example. Whatever it is, you're obviously going to have skills from that. So, you know, working in Tesco, you might have people who are coming up to you all the time. So you've got like communication skills. Problem solving skills is always a big one as well with part-time jobs, and that's a great sort of transferable skill that you can talk about. And again, that's going to be really impressive for a lot of universities. So definitely talk about your part-time job.
And what about who reads over your personal statement? Can teachers read over the students' personal statements?
Yeah, definitely. So when I was talking about asking for feedback, definitely ask your teachers for feedback. That's kind of like why they're there. Ask your teachers, ask your friends, ask, you know, university staff when they come in, into your college or sixth form, even emailing them across as well to university staff, if you are wanting to get that, like, you know, professional opinion sort of thing. But yeah, to answer that question specifically, definitely you can get your teachers to read it. I think your teachers would be a little bit offended if you didn't get them to read it, to be honest. So yeah, defo give it to your teachers to have a read of, yeah.
All right, so when should the students start writing the personal statement then?
Well, the UCAS deadline is always in January, so it's always a good idea to do it before that. You don't want to be writing it the day before because that would be absolutely manic. Probably like, when would I say? Maybe like end of September, definitely by October, you want to have started to write it. Because like I say, you will do so many drafts of it because you'll want it to be as perfect as, you know, you can make it. So starting it early would definitely be my advice, because like I say, you'll do so many drafts, there'll be so many things that you want to add into it. So yeah, the earlier the better.
Great stuff. And do you have any open days coming up?
We do. Our next open day is actually this Saturday. I don't know my lefts from my rights. I can't tell you what the date of that is, but it's this Saturday.
The 23rd, I think.
Yes, lovely. Thanks, Molly. So Saturday the 23rd. So we have our Old Trafford open day. So that's where we have the media digital and sports courses. And then over at the business school, that's obviously, as it says on the tin, that's where all the business courses are. But yeah, that is coming up this Saturday. So if anyone does want to book onto that, then the link is just on our website. But we do also accept walk-ins as well. So yeah.
Fab. So there's 2 campuses, the Old Trafford one,
Yeah.
which is where we are here today.
Yeah.
And where's the business school?
So business school is, I think it's technically classed as Salford where it is, but it's kind of in Spinningfields is what I say. It's like right on the doorstep of Spinningfields, but it's right opposite Salford Central train station. So it's a really, really good location. It's dead easy to get to. You know, if you're travelling by public transport, there's bus routes, there's the trains, like I said, as well, and there's also a paid-for car park right opposite as well. So it's dead easy to get to.
Okay, so do students visit both campus, or do you have specific, if you're doing a specific course, do you go to one?
Yeah, so whatever your sort of top choice is, that's kind of like the campus you would go to. So for example, if I signed up to the open day and I put, I don't know, my top interest was digital marketing, for example, I would head over to the business school. But when you sign up, this is all kind of sent to you, so you do like know this. But yeah, I would go to the business school. But if I was also really interested in like sports journalism, for example, which is over at the Old Trafford campus, we do offer transport between the campuses. So if that is something that you're interested in, doesn't matter if you've started at the business school and want to go over to Old Trafford or vice versa, you've started at Old Trafford and want to go to the business school, just find a member of staff and we'll be able to sort that transport out to you so you can get like to both campuses and experience both days.
Amazing, thanks so much. Like I say, you covered so much there, so hopefully that was helpful for everybody at home. So thank you so much to everybody at home for joining us. I really hope this helps, and if you have any more questions, you can contact us at futures@ua92.ac.uk.